Ready, let's start.
Okay, I'm ready. Can I be on the screen? I'm trying to share with you. No, I didn't want to do that. Jackie, can you get yourself back on here?
I'm there. I'm here.
Okay, we're recording. Do you see both? Okay. Okay. Good evening. I'm Toby Katz, and on behalf of the Sisterhood of Temple Israel of Great Neck, welcome to the latest in our ongoing lecture discussion series, in which we explore a variety of vital contemporary issues in depth. Tonight's program is Tzedek, Tzedek Tirdof. Justice, Justice, You Shall Pursue. Ruth Bader Ginsberg and the Art of Persuasion. We're going to look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legal career before becoming a Supreme Court justice. As an ACLU attorney and founding director of their Women's Project, she argued 6 cases before the Supreme Court. She won 5 of those 6 cases. Methodically, step by step, she attacked specific areas of gender discrimination by invoking both the Due Process Clause of the Constitution, the Fifth Amendment, and the Equal Protection Clause, which was the 14th Amendment. She chipped away at the laws mandating separate standards and separate criteria for men and women while upholding the constitutional principle of equal citizenship stature for both men and women. Join us as we examine these landmark cases, the obstacles that Ruth Bader Ginsburg faced, and her strategy for building bridges with opponents in order to promote civility and to advance the rights of all. Interestingly, these cases all involved laws that discriminated against men. Before I introduce our guest, let me outline the format for tonight's program. It's in 4 parts. After the presentation, we will take questions. Now, because we are such a big group, we ask that you post your questions on chat during the presentation. And we will get to as many as we can. Some will be combined if they're similar to others. After the question segment, we will present a beautiful and very moving rendition of the American anthem sung by the diva Denise Graves. She performed this at the Capitol Rotunda ceremony honoring Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We will conclude with Kaddish and a few closing remarks. Okay, let's begin. Our special guest, Jacqueline Harunian, is a Great Neck attorney, sworn into the United States Supreme Court. Jackie is a partner with the Great Neck firm of Wisselman, Harunian and Associates, rated a 2020 top-tier law firm by U.S. News and World Report. She is a speaker and educator on legal aspects of religious divorce, including the Jewish get and the Islamic mar. She is rated AV Preeminent 2020, the highest rating for ethics and professionalism by Martindale-Hubbell, the largest database for practicing attorneys, and has been repeatedly selected as top 50 women lawyers in New York by Super Lawyers. Jackie was recently honored by JOFA, the Jewish Orthodox Feminist Alliance, as one of the notable women who paved the way in 5770. And we have a picture of that, if we can show it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it. There we go. Okay, Jackie's picture is circled. And if you take a look, she's in incredibly good company. To her left, 2 over, is Blue Greenberg, the founder of the Jewish Orthodox Feminist Alliance. And to her right, 2 over, is Rabbi Sarah Hurwitz, the first Orthodox woman to be ordained as a rabbi. Okay. Jackie is immediate past president of the Yashar chapter, Hadassah chapter for lawyers and judges, and currently serves as director for the Nassau County Women's Bar Association, chairing the Domestic Violence Committee. She is a member of Temple Israel of Great Neck and resides in Great Neck, where she and her husband Maurice raised 4 children. Before Jackie begins, let's hear Ruth Bader Ginsburg's views on discrimination in her own words. This was her last public interview in August of 2020. And can we show the video? Jamie? That's right. Whenever you're ready. Jamie? We're waiting for the video.
Sorry.
Wrong one.
Oh,
Wrong one.
sorry.
That's right.
All right.
Jackie, while we're waiting, we all know what a get is. What is an Islamic mar?
So this is something that I have experience with in my law practice. An Islamic mar is actually a religious marriage contract that Muslims sign during their marriage ceremony, which is enforceable as part of a, almost like a ketubah, very similar in certain aspects. So it's something that I deal with in my practice. So it's very interesting how different religions have very similar religious rights upon marriage and also upon divorce.
No, it's interesting.
Maybe we can play the video at the end if that works. And
no, it has to come now. Let me try to do it.
Oh, is
Okay.
it not playing?
No. Jamie, let me try to do it.
All right.
Okay, I have to minimize this and do a screen share. Can you see this?
Yeah, we see it.
Can you see this?
Yes,
You see this?
Yep.
You see Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
correct. Yes.
Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, on discrimination, read by Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I try to teach through my opinions, through my speeches, how wrong it is to judge people on the basis of what they look like, color of their skin, whether they're men or women.
All right.
Okay, and now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Jacqueline Harunian.
Thank you for that very beautiful introduction, Toby. And I want to thank my synagogue, Temple Israel of Great Neck, for inviting me to do this tribute tonight. Woman of valor, trailblazer, Dayan, Tzedeket, glorious and notorious. These words describe Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Yita Rachel Bat Celia, more than any other person in history. She passed away 1 month and 1 day ago on September 18th, 2020, the eve of the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, at the age of 87, a working jurist until the end. During her life, she was like a shofar, sounding a clarion call for equality, justice, and the humanity we all share. Her death caused shockwaves to reverberate around the world. My presentation today is a retrospective of her amazing life and groundbreaking legal career. I will also share some of my own personal reflections and what I believe to be her most lasting legacy besides her canon of academic and legal contributions. Her example to conquer obstacles and build bridges with opponents, which is something we can all appreciate and learn from during these very contentious times and a particularly challenging year. After her death, Justice Ginsburg became the first woman in history to lie in state at the Capitol, which underscores her impact as a trailblazer for women. She was also the first Jewish person and only the second Supreme Court justice ever to lie in state at the Capitol. Her casket was placed on top of a platform that was used for President Abraham Lincoln's funeral in 1865. And for the first time in American history, there was a traditional Jewish prayer service in the Great Hall of the Supreme Court, performed by a conservative woman rabbi. Pictured here are her devoted law clerks guarding her casket, and she was later buried at Arlington National Cemetery. RBG's extraordinary biography is a must-read. It is a testament to her strength, her tenacity, her incredible marriage, and her commitment to we the people. She came from a poor working class family, and she survived hardships virtually since birth, but she also enjoyed incredible triumphs. Some other random facts that I learned from my research: she failed her driver's test 5 times. The percentage of women in her class at Harvard Law School was 2%. And she was the first woman in history to be selected for Harvard Law Review. And her main concession to entering her late 70s was to stop water skiing. Throughout it all, she was a radical just by being herself. She continuously subverted every cliche and defied stereotypes in a man's world. She proved that power and influence is not always a big, tall, loud man. Sometimes it's a quietly confident and demure Jewish grandmother with a lace collar who can gain your undivided attention and change the world. Pictured here is the inner chamber of the United States Supreme Court. As you can see, the court is like a theater. There is pomp and ceremony, court officers in very fancy dress uniforms, and formality beyond any judicial or legislative chamber or court you will find anywhere. I have been inside this courtroom twice and have watched oral arguments for groundbreaking constitutional cases. For an attorney, it's like being front row at the Super Bowl, or what I've heard, from what I've heard. I was privileged to be up close and personal with Justice Ginsburg with other groups of Jewish lawyers. The first time was in 2013 with the Brandeis Association, along with my twin sister, Janet. Our group was sworn in and admitted to practice in the Supreme Court by Chief Justice John Roberts, who was warm and charming. The second time was in 2016, which is pictured here, when I was the acting president of the Yashar Hadassah group of lawyers and judges, along with Hadassah's National Attorneys Council. Justice Scalia had died only a week or two before, and the mood was very somber. But after oral arguments, we had a private lunch reception with Justice Ginsberg, and I sat right next to her when our group gave her a very special gift. And it was a surreal and unforgettable moment. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the daughter of immigrants, shy and studious. She married during college. She started law school when she had a toddler at home. She attended Columbia University and later taught at a law school. She had a devoted husband who supported her and bragged about her. And besides her love of the law and commitment to a career was her strong Judaism and Zionism, which was all compatible with her beliefs in fighting for equality for all. So each of those things I just mentioned about her are also true about me. For obvious reasons, I have always felt a very special kinship with RBG. Her life and her career have made an indelible impression on me and so many others of different faiths and backgrounds. Although she was very tiny of stature, she made a name for herself by standing out, not fitting in like other women of her generation. She once said, "My mother told me two things constantly. One was to be a lady, and the other was to be independent." The study of law was unusual for women of my generation. For most girls growing up in the 40s, the most important degree was not your BA, but your MRS. Not much had changed for many women who grew up in the 80s like me, at least not in my circle. And I know plenty of people, even today, who believe quite vehemently that getting married is the be-all and end-all for women. By prioritizing education and professional achievement, RBG gave ordinary women, wives, mothers like me, a platform to shine and thrive beyond our wildest dreams. Tonight, I'm also thinking of my grandmothers of blessed memory, Malik and Nina. Like RBG, they were women of steely strength. Like her, devoted matriarchs who made an impact and left a lasting legacy, although to a smaller crowd. I think of RBG's famous quote about her immigrant parents. "What's the difference between a bookkeeper in New York's garment district and a US Supreme Court justice?" Answer: one generation. It is remarkable, even inconceivable, that as she approached her 9th decade, she became a pop culture icon, a fashion muse, and for many, a real-life superhero. Because let's face it, she was really old and frail, and little old ladies are supposed to step aside and stay out of the way. As I will explain, from the beginning of her professional life, it was likely because of and not in spite of her tiny stature and her disarming demeanor that she found men and women who were willing to listen and learn, even to an octogenarian. She raised the status and the credibility for women of all ages, fighting the good fight and battling a lethal disease time and time again until she passed the torch. So here is what she looked like in the 1970s. She was in her 40s. Not everyone knows that it was Attorney Ginsberg who made it possible for the equal stature of women and men as a fundamental constitutional principle. We, the people, included men and women of all races and faiths and abilities. To this day, she is given well-deserved credit for being the legal architect of the women's rights movement due to her brilliant mind and equally brilliant litigation strategy. So how did the opportunity first come about? In the early 1970s, the National Board of the American Civil Liberties Union declared women's rights as one of its top legal and legislative priorities, creating the National Women's Rights Project, the WRP. Justice Ginsburg had just accepted a job as the first female tenured professor at Columbia Law School. The same year, she was hand-selected to be the director and the founder of the WRP. She would later explain her desire to direct it. I wanted to be part of a general human rights agenda. Civil liberties are an essential part of the overall human rights concern, the equality of all people, and the ability to be free. Here's what she said on civil rights. I was very sensitive to discrimination. I am alert to discrimination. I grew up during World War II to a Jewish family. I have memories as a child, even before the war, of being in a car with my parents and passing a place with a sign out in the front that read, "No dogs or Jews allowed." Signs of this kind existed in this country during my childhood. One couldn't help but be sensitive to discrimination living as a Jew in America at the time of World War II. And what about sex discrimination? It's likely that her crusade for gender equality was sparked by the fact that despite graduating first in her class in 1959 at law school, she couldn't get a job at a law firm because no reputable firm would hire a woman. So she got a job teaching law. Pregnancy discrimination remains a tremendous barrier to working women, and RBG herself encountered it. She was afraid that her teaching contract wouldn't be renewed if her baby bump showed, so she took measures to conceal it. And she recalled, I got through the spring semester without detection with the help of a wardrobe one size larger than mine, borrowed from my mother-in-law. She ultimately gave birth to her son just before the fall semester began. She recognized that many women needed to work when they were pregnant. Many of them did not have husbands to support them. Furthermore, only a woman's body shows proof of having sex, and only women were punished for having it. She argued that pregnancy should be seen as a temporary disability because the concept of disability is gender neutral. She knew that anything that looked like a favor to women would be used against them. But it was much more than just pregnancy. In the early 1970s, sex discrimination affected most aspects of life. The WRP went after hundreds of federal laws that discriminated on the basis of sex in education, employment, reproductive rights, mortgages, credit cards, banking, house rentals, women in prison and in the military. At the time, many people believed that the law should treat women differently to protect them. So for example, some laws prevented female employees from lifting more than 15 pounds or working at night. And to this day, this yearning for protectionism and romantic paternalism continues, even if it keeps some women from participating fully in society. Ginsburg knew that she had to attack on every front in order to get equality by raising awareness for the public, changing the law, and bringing cases to the United States Supreme Court with the help of local ACLU affiliates across the country. At the core of her beliefs was that it's not helpful to the advancement of women or men if they are kept from pursuing careers that were once thought to be only women's work or only man's work. In her words, I have found no natural superiority or deficiency in either sex. Grading papers or listening to arguments in court, there is no reliable indicator of distinctly male or distinctly female thinking. Six ACLU cases went up to the Supreme Court, and RBG argued 6 of these cases herself and she won 5 of them. I want to mention that she argued hundreds of other cases in the federal courts, but these are the 6 that she herself argued before the 9 justices. It's important to note that all of these cases were to help men. Each of these plaintiffs were men, and they were victims of gender discrimination. And these were ordinary people, not rich or powerful people. At the time, many people were confused and even angry that she brought so many cases with male plaintiffs, because it was supposed to be called the Women's Rights Project, not the Men's Rights Project. But later on, people realized that RBG was a genius for presenting 9 male justices with victims that looked like them and were like them and relatable to them. So she knew exactly what she was doing. Like any good teacher, she knew that one does not learn a lesson in a day. Generally, in our society, change takes time and it's incremental. And real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time, brick by brick. She encouraged her feminist coworkers to be patient and to be strategic. She said, don't ask them to go too far, too fast, or you'll lose what you might have won. So let's go through the cases one at a time. The first case that she argued was the 1972 case of Frontiero versus Richardson. Sharon Frontiero was a 23-year-old married Air Force lieutenant in Alabama. Her husband was a college student, and he followed her to her base to support her career. But he was denied the same housing and medical allowance through Sharon that other men in the Air Force automatically received for their wives. The federal statute providing such allowances for spouses of military personnel stated that while all wives are automatically entitled to such funds, husbands had to prove that they were more than half dependent on their wives for support. Sharon and her husband thought this was unfair, and RBG agreed. She described the experience of stepping in front of the justices in the court for the first time in her life as follows. I was terribly nervous. In fact, I didn't eat lunch for fear that I might throw up. But 2 minutes into my argument, the fear dissolved. Suddenly, I realized that here before me were the 9 leading jurists of America, a captive audience. I felt a surge of power that carried me through. In her brief to the court, Ginsberg recounted the history of women's subjugation with references to Alexis de Tocqueville and Alfred Lord Tennyson. Her language was precise, creative, and devastating. She told the story of sex discrimination, how it had been and how it had to end. She said, I knew that I was speaking to men who didn't think that there was any such thing as gender-based discrimination, and my job was to tell them that it really exists. To make the point to the 9 men that were sitting on the bench, she said, I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off of our necks. After she finished, a colleague remarked, there was not a single question or comment from any of the justices. They were completely transfixed. When the decision was issued, 8 of the 9 justices agreed that the Air Force had wrongly discriminated against female officers. They upheld the principle for the first time that a wife's work was just as important to her family as it was for a male service member. Chief Justice Rehnquist was the only one who dissented. And I guess he got some flack for it when he got home. Later, he told the Los Angeles Times, my wife became resigned long ago to the idea that she married a male chauvinist pig. And my daughters never pay any attention to anything I do. The next case that she argued was Khan versus Shevin. And this was actually the only case out of the 6 that she lost. And this was one of 3 cases that she argued for widowers. The widowers were Khan, Weisenfeld, and Goldfarb. In each of these cases, she represented men that were harmed by discriminatory federal and state laws. Weisenfeld and Goldfarb were about Social Security benefits. The Kahn case was about a property tax benefit. So Kahn sadly lost his wife. He thought it was unfair that widows, but not widowers, could get a $500 exemption from Florida property taxes. The case went up to the court, and Justice Brennan, ruling against Kahn, said, there can be no dispute that the financial difficulties confronting the lone woman in Florida or in any other state exceeds those facing the man, whether from overt discrimination or from the socialization process of a male-dominated culture. The job market is inhospitable to the woman seeking anything but the lowest paid jobs. So in other words, the court believed that widows were entitled to special breaks because of past discrimination, and that widowers did not deserve that. The next case was one of her favorites. I call it the Mr. Mom case. In Weinberger versus Weisenfeld, RBG argued the case of a single father. Stephen Weisenfeld's wife had been the primary breadwinner, and upon her death during childbirth, Stephen Weisenfeld went to the local Social Security office to inquire about survivors' benefits, and he found out that he didn't qualify because he was a man. Ginsberg convinced the Supreme Court that the section of the Social Security Act that denied fathers benefits because of their sex was unconstitutional. She selected this case to prove that Social Security inequality was a form of sexism that hurt everyone. Her argument to the court was that just as the female status as a breadwinner is denigrated, so the parental status of the surviving spouse as a caretaker is also discounted. And she also argued for the rights of the child. His name was Jason. The young son was another victim of the law that includes children with dead fathers, but excludes children with dead mothers. This is her words to the court. The justices unanimously agreed with her argument. Given the purpose of the law to enable a surviving parent to remain at home to care for the child, the gender-based distinction of the law was irrational. Even Chief Justice Rehnquist agreed, saying that he voted to strike down the law because it harmed the baby. The Weisenfeld case was part of an evolution of the law towards a policy of neutrality, a policy that will accommodate traditional patterns in families, but at the same time, one that removes artificial constraints so that men and women who are willing to explore their full potential as humans may create new traditions by their actions. So in other words, way back in the 1970s, RBG was strengthening the rights of active and involved fathers. And she knew how important it was because her own husband was an active and involved father. She once stated, "This is my dream for society, fathers loving and caring for and helping to raise their children." This radically progressive thinking of hers so many decades ago is very significant, because today in my family law practice, which is 40 or 50 years after Weisenfeld, the law of the land really is joint custody and gender neutral laws when it comes to child custody. And until a few years ago, maybe as recently as 5 or 10 years ago, it was presumed that women are naturally superior as primary caretakers, whether it's in the best interest of the children or not. And the law takes time to catch up with society and with culture, but we can thank RBG for arguing in favor of parenting equality. As a working woman herself, she recognized that in order for women to advance in the professional sphere, their partners at home need to advance in the domestic sphere. So RBG also litigated many, many cases regarding juries and jury service. In Edwards versus Healy, she argued that state laws that made jury service for women optional, but not optional for men, were not constitutional. She believed that juries with men and women were essential to the right to a fair trial and for equal protection under the law. At the time, in many states, it was believed that women could be exempted from jury service because they had more duties that were important at home. RBG believed that making women's service optional made women's role in public life, including jury deliberations, inferior. Keeping women off the jury could also potentially hurt defendants who are entitled to a jury of their peers. Here is an actual slide that I found. These are actually records from the Supreme Court file that show some of the notes on the case from Edwards versus Healy. And on the left, you see the names of the justices, the 9 male justices that RBG argued in front of. The next case that she argued was Califano versus Goldfarb. And Ginsberg won this case for the appellee, who was another widower. Leon Goldfarb was a retired federal worker who challenged the constitutionality when he was denied benefits upon the death of his wife because he failed to meet the statute's requirement that he be providing less than a quarter of the family's income. His late wife was a school teacher who had paid 25 years into the system, and she expected that she and her husband would be fully protected from the economic consequences of old age, disability, and death. She argued that the law was based on a stereotypical assumption that the earnings of men are vital to the family and earnings of women are not. This seems like a no-brainer today, that since the wife had paid into Social Security, it was discriminatory for the agency not to pay out to a spouse of a, quote, identically situated male worker. During her oral argument on this case, RBG stated, most anti-female discrimination was dressed up as discrimination favoring the woman. She asked for these cases to be subjected to strict scrutiny. She explained that while race discrimination was immediately perceived as evil and odious and intolerable, laws discriminating against women were often justified as protecting women. The last case that she argued in front of the Supreme Court was another jury case, Duren versus Missouri, and she won this case. Billy Duren was a convicted criminal, first-degree murder, first-degree robbery, not a very sympathetic victim. At the time, in his state, in Missouri, women were not compelled to serve on juries, and only men were. Under the jury selection system, women could get out of service by claiming an exemption or failing to return the summons or simply not showing up. So while women made up 54% of Jackson County's population at the time, only 5 members out of the 53-person jury pool were women. Duren believed that his Sixth Amendment rights to a fair trial were being violated. So Ginsberg took the case to argue in favor of equal representation on the jury. In her presentation, Ginsberg argued that women bring a certain, quote, indefinable something, close quote, to a jury. The case was about Duren's rights as a criminal defendant, but the message was that she used to convince the court was it only wasn't about the rights of women, it was about the responsibility of women and for the system to value the voices of women. She believed that women belong everywhere that decisions are being made. Men need to learn that when women show up in their midst in big numbers, they are not, quote, one at a time curiosities, close quote. Slowly but surely, she built a set of precedents that walked the male justices in her direction towards recognizing women as we the people. She said, I think that women and men shoulder to shoulder will work together to make this a better world. Just as I don't think men are the superior sex, neither do I think women are. I think it's great that we are beginning to use the talents of all the people in all walks of life, and that we no longer have the closed doors we once had. She established that sex is a suspect classification. By the way, when she said sex, she meant gender. And in later years, she started to use the word gender because her secretary told her that people got very rattled that she used the word sex all the time. And to fast forward into 2020 and beyond, it is well known that all successful corporations and governments have both men and women leading the way. In fact, just today, it was announced that to promote gender equality and to signal to the business sector, the Cabinet of the State of Israel announced a 3-year goal that at least half of all top posts in civil service must be filled by women. Surely RBG is smiling at this news. In retrospect, we can only marvel at how RBG obtained the results and the acclaim that she did as a lawyer and a jurist. She won over 9 relatively old men on the court and later on the mostly male senators during her own confirmation hearings for the US Supreme Court in 1993 when she was 60 years old. In fact, as hard as it is to imagine, given the polarization we have today over Supreme Court nominations, the vote to confirm her in the Senate was 97-3. She was the nominee of choice for Republicans and Democrats, despite real ideological differences between the parties. In her acceptance speech in 1993, she said, "This contributes to the end of days when women, at least half the talent pool in our society, appear in high places only as one-at-a-time performers." Speaking of her mother, who died when RBG was only 17, she said, "She was the bravest and strongest person I have known, who was taken from me much too soon. I pray that I may be all that she would have been had she lived in an age where women could aspire and achieve, and daughters are cherished as much as sons." So how did she please the court and win over the public? Her communication style was unusual, always capturing her audience's rapt attention. Observers noticed that the justices would sit up straight when she talked. Some used the words mesmerizing. She spoke with a strong Brooklyn accent, carefully, haltingly, sometimes pausing right in the middle of a sentence. And she used her voice and tone to emphasize legal points. When asked why she spoke so slowly, she said it was so her ideas could be fully grasped. And she achieved success without fanfare or by seeking the limelight. She didn't call attention to women, just as her own modest clothing and her quiet demeanor did not call attention to her. She possessed a natural elegance, a very conservative fashion sense, and above all, a very calm confidence. Bottom line, despite her revolutionary goals and ideas, she was not threatening to her audience. She was a teacher. And because she was a teacher, I'd like to honor her by emphasizing her most important lessons and takeaways. So her lasting legacy. I'm just going to read them and hopefully we can share these with the next generation. 1, work hard. 2, rise above your challenges and turn them into opportunities. 3, disagree without being disagreeable. And 4, strong relationships at home and at work are the key to a happy life and a thriving career. A few more points on how to disagree without being disagreeable. And she was very firm on this point. Number 1, anger and resentment are a waste of time and they sap your energy. 2, fight for what you believe in, but do it in a way to get others to join you and come along with you. Go slowly because meaningful change is built step by step and brick by brick. Number 3, in any relationship, including marriage, sometimes it helps to be a little deaf. 4, don't raise your voice. You can be a fierce and tenacious advocate anyway. 6, be meticulous and well prepared. 7, know your audience. Be like a kindergarten teacher. I came across something that she wrote. This is in one of her speeches, and this is the advice she gave to young lawyers when they were learning advocacy or the art of persuasion. So this is what she told. This is what she told law students: be brief, be pointed. Spend no words on trifles. Condense. Strike but a few blows. Strike them to the heart. Scattered fires smother in smoke and noise. Keep this your main guide. Short be your speech, your matter strong and clear. And leave off when done. So we are near the end of our time together, and so it's time to get a little political. And by that, I mean bipartisan. In a couple of weeks, we are going to have an important election, and I think we all know it can go either way. So probably like most of you, at my synagogue, at my Shabbat table, in my office, on Facebook, everywhere I go, there is the left and the right and the center. But this is a good opportunity to reflect on RBG's most timely lesson to all of us, because she had close relationships with men, both at home and at work. They respected her and she respected them. And it's very common knowledge that Nino, the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, was a close personal friend of hers for almost 2 decades. They called themselves the odd couple because in so many ways they were polar opposites. He was a large man, she was a tiny woman. He was Catholic, she was Jewish. He was very extroverted and bombastic, and she was very introverted and very deliberate. Of course, she was a Democrat, he was a Republican, she was a liberal, and he was a conservative. And they frequently ended up on opposite sides of a case, with one of them making a very sharp dissent against the other. But they spent a lot of time with each other outside of the court. They went on frequent trips and even rode on an elephant together in India. And their families spent holidays together. And they both bonded through a love of opera, and they even co-starred in one together. When Scalia died in 2016, Ginsberg said, "We were best buddies. We never spoke politics or ideology to each other because there would be no point." Scalia would say, "If you can't disagree ardently with your colleagues about some issues of law and yet personally still be friends, get another job for Pete's sake." Ginsberg said, "As annoyed as you might be about his zinging dissent, he's so utterly charming, so amusing, so sometimes outrageous, you can't help but say, I'm glad he is my friend." Throughout their lives, they had the deepest respect for each other, and they kept their disagreements at the office. As others have noticed, they practiced what many people preach, but fewer people practice: tolerance and respect. So in these particularly divisive times, when it seems that half of America is at war with the other half, this is a very, very important lesson to learn. We should live by RBG and Scalia's example and remember that at the end of the day, whether we are on the left or the right or in the center, we are all Americans and we share a basic humanity. Pictured here are some of the tributes that came out after her death. This is a picture of her when she was a professor at Columbia. This is the alma mater of Columbia University. And here is the 50th Street subway station that someone altered, and it says Ruth Street. I want to thank all of you for joining us for this presentation. The truth from Ruth is that remember what is good in every person, even if you have to look a little harder to find it. Let go of hard feelings. Be kind to each other. Anger is a waste of time. Be a little deaf. And now I'm going to turn the program back over to Toby so we can have a musical tribute.
Okay, Jackie, I don't, am I there? Okay, here I am. Hi. Okay, Jackie, do you want to take questions?
Oh, that's right. Let me see.
Yeah, let's see if we
One
have any
moment.
questions. We don't have any questions.
Okay, fantastic.
You know what that means, don't you? If we don't have any questions, it means that everything was so concise and inclusive.
That's great.
Jackie, I prepared a thank you for you,
Okay.
but all I want to say is this was spellbinding.
Oh,
This was totally spellbinding. You wove in her personal life, her philosophy, her values, everything. This was inspirational and spellbinding. On behalf of the Sisterhood of Temple Israel of Great Neck, thank you for your insightful analysis of the legacy that Ruth Bader Ginsburg left all of us. Her victories in court, her opinions from the bench, and her philosophy of building bridges, which is so sorely needed today, as you pointed out. As a token of our appreciation, the Sisterhood of Temple Israel of Great Neck will make a contribution in your honor to UJA Federation's Hope Against Domestic Violence Committee. I know that's something near and dear to your heart.
it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much. And now we will get on this. You've inspired me just listening to her story. There's so much I didn't know, and I am truly inspired in my own life. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
No, we appreciate. Okay, the third part of our four-part series is a musical presentation. And after that, we will say Kaddish for Ruth Bader Ginsburg for those who wish to join us. First up is a video of the diva Denise Graves, who was a personal friend and great favorite of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Denise Graves is singing the American anthem. That's the video. She's shown singing the American anthem in the Capitol Rotunda at the memorial for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The words so accurately describe Justice Ginsburg's life work, and they are basically a call to action to all of us, reminding us that we all have something to contribute to make our country live up to its stated ideals. And unfortunately, we're still working toward that. The theme for our program tonight is Tzedek, Tzedek Tirdof, justice, justice, you shall pursue. In Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, Rabbi Tarfon, and we all meet him every year at the Passover Seder, is quoted as saying, the day is short, the work is much, the reward is great, and the master, meaning the employer, is pressing. It is not incumbent upon you to finish the work, but neither are you free to absolve yourself from doing it. We all have something to do, something to contribute. Now, many of us think, well, I'm just an ordinary person. I have no influence. What can I do? One of the greatest social revolutions in American history began with an ordinary woman who wouldn't give up her seat on the bus. We can all do something. We will follow this by Kaddish. And Jamie, if you can help us out. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Denise Graves.
Okay, let's see if this works this time.
There you go. That's it. Is it working? Okay, let's try it this way.
Oh, it's not coming through?
No, I
Ah,
just
sorry.
I just lost the meeting. I'm going to come back in and I'll do it myself.
Okay.
Can't do that. Okay, I can't. I have to leave the.
Oh. Toby's gonna come right back in.
Can you open the file, Jamie?
Okay, sure, I'll try mine again.
Because I can't see the file because this is covering it.
All right, one moment. All right, let's try this again, sorry.
Okay, can you open that?
Is it coming through?
No, all I see is your arrow, but it's not opening.
Um, all right, let's try it this way.
Are we still recording?
We are
Yes.
recording.
All right, let's try this another way. Give me 1 sec. Sorry.
That's not it. It's that one,
The top one.
top one.
Not seeing it?
No.
I can stop your screen sharing. I'm going to stop yours.
Okay, why don't you try it on yours? For some reason it won't come through
I
mine.
can't do that because I have Jackie as full screen.
Oh,
If you can,
sure, I'll
as
make
long as
yours.
Jackie is in full screen, I can't see my
Okay.
files.
I just made yours.
Okay, I still can't see my files. We have to all be minimized.
Let's try this one other way.
Okay, let's try this now.
There we go.
Okay.
All we've been given by those who came before, the dream of a nation where freedom would endure, the work and breath for centuries each generation from the plains to distant shore, with the gifts they were given, were determined to leave more. Valiant battles fought together, acts of conscience fought alone. These are the seeds from which America has grown. Let them say of me, I was one who believed in sharing the blessings I've received. Let me know in my heart when my days are through. America, America, I gave my best to you. For those who think they have nothing to share,
Oh shit, it froze.
who fear in their hearts there is no hero there. Know each quiet act of dignity is that which fortifies the soul of a nation that never, never dies, never dies. Let them say of me, I was one who believed in sharing the blessings I've received. Let me know in my heart when my days are through. America, 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 I gave my best to you.
Okay. Okay. Oh, Jackie, you didn't mention this.
Yeah, this is a photo of the Supreme Court building with all of the flowers that her supporters left after her death. She's
Okay.
a
And
Eshet Chayil.
Jackie, you also pointed out the influence she had on all women. And when the news broke that Friday night that she had passed on, spontaneously, women came from all over Washington, D.C. and the surrounding areas to the Supreme Court building. Some brought flowers, some just came. And as a tribute to her, you know, in our tradition, we don't do this, but in the Christian tradition, they spontaneously started singing Amazing Grace as a tribute to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This is how beloved she was. And for those of us who remember that Friday night, the news was a gut punch. It was really difficult. I thank you, Jackie. If we can close that out momentarily. If we can, okay, momentarily. Okay, we're going to conclude with the mourner's Kaddish. As Jackie mentioned, and in a moment the words will appear on the screen, as Jackie mentioned, when Ruth was 17 and a senior at James Madison High School in Brooklyn, she was named class valedictorian. She never gave her speech. She never went to her graduation. The day before her graduation, her mother died of cancer, and on graduation day, she and her father were home sitting Shiva. Afterwards, she wanted to say Kaddish for her mother. the rabbi of her family synagogue refused to let her do so on the grounds that she was a woman. There was no halachic reason to deny her the comfort of saying Kaddish for her mother. Not then and not now. And Ruth never forgot that. We're going to put the Kaddish on the screen. Those of you who wish to join me, please feel free to do so. And Jackie, do we have that? Do we have the PowerPoint, Jackie? It's the next to the last slide. If not, I'll do it. It's okay. I'll do it. Oops, wrong one.
Oh God, I lost the end.
Here we go. Okay, if you wish to join, please join. And this is for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shmei rabah. V'olma divrach yirusei v'yamlich malchusei. V'chaye chon uv'yomei chon v'chaye dechol beis Yisrael. Ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehe shmei rabah mevorach li'olam u'li'olmei olmaya. Yisbarach, Yishtabach, Yispa'ar, Yisramam, Yisnaseh, Yissadar, Yisalev, Yisalal, Shemei Kudashah, Brichu, Le'ela, Min Kol B'chasa V'shirasa, Tush B'chasa V'nechamasa, Damiram B'olma V'imru, Amen. Yehe Shlomo Rabo, Min Shmaya, V'chayim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei sevel, v'nomar, amen. Rest in peace, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And now, the conclusion. Again, I want to thank Jackie Harunian for an incredible presentation, doing an incredible job. We're really grateful to you. And thank you to everyone for coming. Our next programs, and we have a very ambitious program schedule at Temple Israel and in Sisterhood, will be on our website and in our emails. And we thank you all for coming. Stay safe, vote, and good night. Jackie, do you have the portrait?
Thank you. I'm going to try to put that back up, Toby. I'm not sure if I can.
Okay.
Good night, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jackie. This was fabulous. This was fabulous. Okay, let me see if I can do it.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, let's go down.
Last one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Thank you, everybody, and good night. Hostess. Okay, good night, everybody. I'm going to close out, okay?